Hi, okay, here we have the block for room 3. Now you can see on the top here, the top face is the valve seat, or as I like to call it that. And what I've done is put a little bit of Vaseline on here. I mean, it literally is a tiny smear on there. And here are the valves, and inside, you probably can just see inside, if I can get this right, there we go. Inside there, don't think the light will allow me to show you it. But if you ever need to change the valve, it's this bit here, and I'll disassemble one in a minute so you can see how it goes together. Now there are two O-rings on here. One is slightly fatter than the other. This lower one, now if you ever need to change it, I'll give you the sizes now. So the internal diameter, that's the ID, internal diameter, is 28mm, and the cross section is 1.5mm. The top one is the same internal diameter, that's 28mm, but the cross section is bigger. It's it's 2mm cross section. Okay. Now the best way to insert these is I've put two nuts on here, and because this, when it goes in, has to screw down into the base here, and what I'm going to do is put a little bit of Vaseline on these O-rings here. The main bit is the bottom one at the moment. That's that chap there, because he needs to slide into this opening in here. Okay, so there's a bit on there. Now we could really do with a little bit of Vaseline in here, so I've got a little spatula here which I can just run round inside there, just to put a little bit of Vaseline in there. It'll just stop the O-ring from tearing when it goes in. So if we put that in like that, and then you just need to push down so the O-ring goes in, and then once you start turning it, it'll start to tighten up, and this O-ring here will eventually bottom out. So if you use a spanner, you can now just nip this up, and I'm just going to have to tighten it up against itself like that, and just give it a little tweak. Now don't overdo it, because this is only thin wall tube. So to remove that, you just simply undo the top one, and then these come off like that, and then we've now got a nut to go on here, and on the inside of the nut there's actually a chamfer. There we go, there's a chamfer on the inside opening, and that'll seat against this O-ring here, and that'll just tighten down against there. But you can almost do it finger tight, it doesn't need an awful lot of pressure. And again, I'm just going to put a little bit of Vaseline on here. It'll just stop the O-ring from getting torn. So I'll put that onto all the way around there like that, and then that'll go down. Like that, and literally you can just finger tighten that, and then just wipe off any excess Vaseline. So that's fine. Right, I'll strip one of the valves down so you can see. I'll just spin the camera around. Let's have a look. Just bear with me while I position this. Okay, so there we go. Right, here is one of the valves. Now that's been unscrewed out of that tube. Okay, and what you'll find is that underneath here, this O-ring here tends to tear when you undo it, so you can always take it off and just clean it up, pop it back on again. when you reinstall this, you want to put a little bit of Vaseline on there. Okay, so to strip it, on the top here there's a little copper. You can see, I'm just going to push it with my nail to take it off. Okay, it's in a little slot, so that comes out. Now if you push there, the whole lot will come out the end. So if I, oops, there we go. So if I put it back together, there we go. See, that's come apart. So you've got a seal here. I'll just take the whole thing out. And what you've got on the shaft here is a couple of O-rings and a nylon washer. When you reassemble it, this area needs some Vaseline on it, and that bit locates in that groove there. This will come apart, okay, and then these are the two ceramic bits. You've got to make sure you get those the right way around, well, especially this one. And when you reassemble it, you see there's a little lug there and one at the opposite side, and that locates on two opposing grooves within the chamber. So you just got to make sure you line all that up. Okay, so when it goes back together, it's that fella with the nylon washer. Then you've got that bit, the plastic bit. Then you've got the ceramic part, and that has to locate into one of them, remembering that the lugs have to slide down within the chamber. And then finally your little seal. We'll just take care of them because they're only delicate. They've got a little brass ring inside them which helps to support them. Okay, right, I'll just finish building that and then I'll put the rest of the gubbins on. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, we're back again. Now, just sort of off topic, just show you something interesting. Let me show you something interesting. Okay, here we have, this is an ivy leaf. Okay, and here's one that has been nickel plated. I'm going to gold plate this next with 9 carat. But what I did with the original leaf was I coated it with 2 coats of shellac, and then I used some pure silver powder which is mixed with solvent, and I used an airbrush to brush it onto here, and this then gives me a conductive surface. And what I did was I built it with an acid copper, which is, you can get a very heavy deposit with the copper, especially the acids rather than the cyanide one. And then once I'd built up in a sufficient thickness, I sanded it down, and obviously you have to clean it in a particular way, and then this has been coated in nickel, which creates a barrier between the copper and the gold, because the copper, if you like, it sort of dissolves, if you like, into the copper. So that creates the barrier, does the nickel, and then the next step is to gold plate it. So just off topic but interesting. Okay, right, the block is now built up. So what I'm going to put this together here just to show you how it goes together. So what you need first of all is the shroud needs putting on, and before you do that you need to make sure that the valve is closed, so that you know for the orientation of the ceramic indices, the little cap for this one. So just bear with me because it's a long thread, is this one. Now it has got spanner flaps in it, but you don't need to put a spanner on here. It's just literally hand tight, and that's fine. So the first thing you've got to do is work out where the stem sits in relation to the valve. So the first thing to do is to put together the stem and the tap head, and you've got to make sure there can be 180 degrees out, can they? So you've got to make sure that you get it the right way, otherwise you'll mess the thread up. Okay, so actually the first thing I've got to do is just put a little bit of Vaseline on this groove here for the O-ring. Now the O-rings I'm using here are, I'll give you the size, 10mm internal diameter, and the cross section is 2.5mm, but I couldn't find an O-ring the right size that I needed for this particular job, even though I've cut the grooves and so on and so forth. So I actually put a small flat on the O-ring because otherwise it'd be too tight to fit into here, and you don't want it too tight. It needs to be just so it just slides in. Okay, so the O-ring's been coated in a bit of Vaseline, and then I'm just going to put a little bit on the bore, and this has been fine sanded in here, so it's nice and smooth. I'll just have to wipe my finger. Okay, so here we go. Now here's the stem and the tap head, so we've got to get this the right way around, and that's the correct way around. We're going to line up the bits and pieces there, and that lines up like that. That's fine. So we'll take the tap head off. That's on the splines. Now the next thing you've got to do is take this bolt, and there's a stainless split washer to stop it from coming undone. Now if you ever strip this down, you must not mix any of the bolts up, shrouds, stems, whatever, because they're all individual to its mating partner, so you can't go changing anything, otherwise you'll have problems. And if you strip it down, make sure you line everything up right. So I'm tightening this up now. Now don't go overboard on tightening this, because it's only quite delicate, if you like, in there. So the next thing is the tap head, and then we can turn it now. So if you remember, we closed that valve to make sure that we could then line up everything correctly. So everything here is pretty much in a line. It's slightly out because of the position of the porcelain centres, excuse my hands. So the next thing to do is just get a really good fitting screwdriver, because you don't obviously want to damage the chrome plating on this, and just get it lined up so it doesn't damage anything, and just give it a little nip so you don't go overboard, and there we go. So that one's done. That's done. And these are obviously quarter turn ceramic valves in there. Excellent. Right, I hope that was instructive, especially the bit about the leaf.